Greetings IB artists, this is Miss A, and today we're going to be covering a really important part of the IB course. So today we're looking at comparative study is one of the three main components of the IB Art course. So the weighting of this component is 20%. The other two, your process portfolio is 40%, and the exhibition is another 40%. This is just for your reference so that you can visualize basically how much of the total each component is worth. This does not mean that this is a less significant component than the others. It really is the foundation on which you base your art making practice as well as your exhibition component. So what do you actually do for the comparative study? The comparative study asks you to pick at least 3 artworks, 2 of which have to be by 2 different artists. So these artworks can be artifacts, objects, images, so basically anything that constitutes a work of art, anything that is a work of art. The IB also says that the selected artworks that you discuss or compare in this component are artworks which somehow resonate with you or are relevant to you in some way. This, I think, is possibly helped by having a theme, because if you kind of have an idea or a subject in mind, the artworks that you select then become easier to pick. Again, you do not have to have a theme for your IB coursework, but I kind of recommend it. It is recommended that at least one of the artworks is one that you experience yourself, right? If you're lucky enough, obviously, if you can see all 3 in person, or if you experience them in whatever way in person, it's always better. And this is why it's you should be going to galleries and museums regularly. If you do not have access to museums and galleries, obviously you will be looking at really good reproductions. But make sure these reproductions are actually really good. So visiting galleries and museums is actually really, really important for this course. I've already discussed this in my video, which is giving you tips on what to actually do and look for in a museum or gallery. Once you've selected these pieces, the comparative study asks you to be critically reflective and to analyze artworks, and analyze these artworks in terms of their context, so their cultural context, their historical context, basically the context that they were made in or produced in. They also want you to kind of evaluate the methods that were used in making these artworks. So the materials used, the strategies used, anything that involves the technical construction or composition of the artworks themselves. And the final thing that you're analyzing when you're looking at these artworks is the way visual arts communicates ideas and intentions. So you're critically thinking about these artworks, and you are expressing or communicating your investigation through written and visual means, right? So don't forget that it is not just about writing about artworks. You can use many visual aids like, drawing and diagrams and annotations, charts if that helps. So make sure that you have a good balance of visuals and written reflections. As in any investigation at this level in IB, make sure that you are using a variety of sources for your research, and that obviously those sources are properly referenced. So where are you going to be recording all this investigation and research and critical thinking and strategies and methodologies? You're going to be doing this in your sketchbook, which the IB calls your visual arts journal. I will be making a video specifically about that visual arts journal, but just to kind of summarize, you are basically recording the results and the process of investigating all these artworks in their three categories of context, methods, and communication in your sketchbooks. And you're going to be doing this by writing, using the written form of recording ideas, research, findings, etc. But you're also going to be balancing that with lots of visuals, right? So drawings, diagrams, photographs, all of that good stuff, right? So make sure that there's plenty of stuff going on, interesting stuff going on in your sketchbook. I've already touched on what the sketchbook is and what the sketchbook isn't in the how to prepare it for IB video. And basically make it a genuine investigation. When a person is looking at your journals, they should feel that it is a genuine investment, genuinely learning and showing that evidence of learning and applying critical thinking and questioning things, etc. It is not a scrapbook. It is not something that just looks good. It should have lots of visuals, which are an investigation in themselves. I've also talked about this in my tips for gallery museums. Drawing is an incredibly profound way of analyzing artworks, because you're basically, while you're drawing, you're thinking about so many aspects of what you're looking at, including, of course, the formal elements. And I'll be talking about this in a second, because that's actually one of the criteria for this component. So now, to just kind of summarize what you're actually supposed to be doing for this component, you're selecting a minimum of 3 artworks, objects, or artifacts, 2 of which have to be by 2 separate artists. You're doing research based on a range of reliable sources, which you are obviously properly referencing. You are analyzing the context of these artworks, whether they're cultural, historical, etc. You are identifying the formal qualities of these artworks. The formal qualities basically mean the elements and principles of art. I will be doing a video on the elements of and principles of art. It is probably something that you should be very familiar with. It is really the foundation that all art, visual art is based on, but I will be making a specific video on that. You may be familiar with the elements and principles of art. However, at this level, they are, applied and analyzed in a much more sophisticated way than they have been previously. So if you're doing, if you're going from the MYP or the GCSE courses, this is the next step in kind of analyzing and applying the elements and principles of art. You're also interpreting the function and the purpose of the artworks, and you are evaluating the cultural significance of the artworks that you're looking at. So within their context, you are looking at why they are important, what gives them meaning, what gives them significance. Once you've done that, you are then asked to compare the artworks, objects, and artifacts. And you are doing this again by looking at connections in terms of the context, the formal qualities, the materials, and the conceptual and the cultural significance. You are also presenting at the end of this a list of sources that you have referenced for the research in this component. With the HL students, this is the component where you actually have an extra criterion. The extra criterion asks you to make connections with your own work and evaluate and analyze how what you have learned has affected your own work. Again, referencing your own work just like you've referenced the artworks and the sources, etc. The comparative study is a study that is independent, which means that it is driven by you. You are the one who is selecting the artifacts. You are looking at these artworks, you're analyzing these artworks, you're learning about the artists who made them, you're learning about how they made them, etc. And you are analyzing these ideas and concepts and knowledge, and you're taking it further. You're expanding it, you know, and you're using your own initiative to flesh out all these things that you're researching and investigating. This is really important. So while your teacher is actually, touching base with you and having regular meetings, just to kind of look at what you're doing and to guide you and to help you, basically, it is something that you should be doing yourself. It's not prescriptive. It's not you waiting for the teacher to say, look, this is what you should be doing, etc., etc. Make sure that you're making the most out of your meetings with your teacher, and be prepared with questions. If you get stuck or if you're struggling with something, make sure that you bring that up and that you discuss this with your teacher. The teacher will be monitoring your progress. They will then fill out an authentication form to say that this is your work. This component is presented in the form of slides. For the SL students, you are producing 10 to 15 slides, which compare at minimum of 3 artworks, 2 of which are by different artists. You are also submitting a list of sources that you have properly referenced. For the HL students, you are doing exactly the same, so 10 to 15 slides of 3 or more artworks done by a minimum of 2 different artists. But you're also providing 3 to 5 slides which are looking at how the artworks and the artists who have produced these artworks have influenced your own work. There's no set dimensions or anything about the slides that you provide. All you know is that you have to provide these slides. However, this is something that I've discussed in my video, How I Mark the IB Art Exam. Make sure that these screens are very, very legible and clear. You may be tempted to just kind of scan a few pages of your sketchbook and just kind of cram everything in. I would really strongly advise you not to do that. Make sure that the pages that you have been, studiously collecting and fleshing out in your sketchbook are somehow edited and summarized and presented in the few slides that you're submitting. You're not really submitting that many. Everything that is on those slides is the best of what you have. Really make sure that they are doing the work that you've done justice.